bucka. Haha. You know the deal.
About next measurement is calculating the surface area of prisms. And just before we talk about that, let's do a quick review of volume of prisms, which we talked about in the last lesson. Here we have a rectangular prism, and as we talked about, when we're calculating the volume of any prism, we start with calculating the area of the base. Calculating the area of the base will tell us how many square centimeters, in this case, fit on the bottom. And if we know how many square centimeters fit on the bottom, we know how many cubic centimeters fit on the bottom. And if we know how many cubic centimeters fit on the bottom, then we just have to look at how many layers we have to fill up this box. And so we multiply the area of the base times the height. So in this case, the base is a rectangle. It's a rectangle that's 1 centimeter by 5 centimeters. So to multiply the area of that rectangle, we multiply length times width, or 5 times 1, and then we take the answer to that and multiply it by the height, which is 3 in this case. So when we multiply those, we get 15. 5 times 1 times 3 is 15, and when we're talking about volume, we're talking about the size of a three-dimensional shape, so it's always in units to the power of 3, so it would be in centimeters cubed. So calculating volume is pretty straightforward. You have a pretty simple equation here. You simply plug in the values and you solve, and just remember to use the correct unit. Well, when we're being asked to calculate the surface area, we're being asked for something a little bit different, and right away you'll notice we see that word area. That word area usually refers to the size of a two-dimensional shape, but if we're talking about a prism is a three-dimensional shape, so you might ask yourself, well, how can we calculate the area of a three-dimensional shape? And the fact is we can't really calculate the area of a three-dimensional shape, but a three-dimensional shape is made from two-dimensional shapes. So each face of this prism is a rectangle, and a rectangle is, of course, a two-dimensional shape. So a rectangular prism is actually made of 6 rectangles. We've got the front here, which is 1 centimeter by 3 centimeters, the back, which is also 1 centimeter by 3 centimeters. We've got the right side over here, which is 3 centimeters by 5 centimeters. The left side, which is also 3 centimeters by 5 centimeters. We've got the top, and the top is 1 centimeter by 5 centimeters. And finally, the bottom. And the bottom is also 1 centimeter by 5 centimeters. So what I've done here is I've taken basically each side, each face of this rectangular prism, and kind of broken it apart here. So you can see that I've got the 6 rectangles, each of the 6 rectangles that we have. Here we have the front and the back. Here we have the right-hand side and left-hand side. And here we have the top and the bottom. When a rectangular prism is sort of unfolded, it's often referred to as a net. This isn't really a net because we couldn't fold these pieces together, but I've kind of broken off each one of the rectangles here. When we're calculating the total surface area, what we're doing is we're finding the area of each of these rectangles and adding them all together. So if we start with this one here, well, to calculate the area of a rectangle, of course, it's length times width. This one's pretty straightforward. 3 times 1, the area of that will be 3 centimeters squared. This is the back. That will have the same area, which is also 3 centimeters squared. If we go to the right-hand side here with this one, multiplying length times width, 3 times 5, we get 15 centimeters squared. And the left-hand side is the same size rectangle. It's also 15 centimeters squared. Now we're looking at the top and the bottom. The length and the width are 5 centimeter and 1 centimeter, so the total area is 5 centimeters squared for that rectangle. And for this rectangle, of course, it's also 5 centimeters squared. So now what we've done is we've found the area of each one of these rectangles by multiplying the length times the width. To calculate the total surface area now, we have to add all of these areas. So if I take the first two, we've got 3 plus 3 plus 15 plus 15 plus 5 plus 5. And our total surface area here is 46. And of course, we're talking about area, so we're talking about the size of a two-dimensional shape, so it'll be centimeters squared. So as you can see here, when you're calculating surface area of a prism, it's actually quite a lot more work than calculating volume. You have to calculate the area of each of the sides and add all of those areas together. Now, there are a few shortcuts that you might figure out in order to be able to kind of get to the end without having to calculate all of the sides. But when you're first practicing this, I suggest that you do calculate the area of all of the sides, make sure that you've got all 6 sides represented, and add them all together. The next example of calculating the surface area of a prism we're going to look at is a triangular prism. So similar to a rectangular prism, except with a triangular prism, of course, we've got 3 rectangles and 2 triangles. So I've gone ahead and broken up this shape into the 5 sides that it has here. So here we've got this side here, which is 5 centimeters by 3 centimeters. The side that we can't see over on the left-hand side here is the same size rectangle, also 5 centimeters by 3 centimeters. We have to be a little bit careful on a triangular prism in that the rectangles can be different sizes. Like this one here on the bottom, you can see is a different size. It's 1 centimeter by 2 centimeter. And then finally we've got the triangles on the front and the back, and I've drawn those here, where the base is 1 centimeter and the height is 2 centimeters. So what we're going to go ahead and do now is calculate the area of each one of these sides. If we do the first rectangle here, length times width, 5 times 3 is 15. I'll take the unit out of it for now and just include it in the last answer. This rectangle is also 15 centimeters squared, 5 times 3. This one here is 5 centimeters squared, 5 times 1. Now, with area of a triangle, just as a reminder, to calculate the area of a triangle, it's base times height divided by 2. So if we're going to substitute our values in there, the base is 1, the height is 2, so we get 1 times 2 divided by 2, which of course is 1. So the area of this triangle here is 1 centimeter squared, and this triangle is the same, so it will also have an area of 1 centimeter squared. So when we're calculating the total surface area here, of course, we're going to again add up all the areas. We've got our 15 plus our second 15 plus our 5 plus 1 and plus 1, and our total surface area now is 37 centimeters squared. And again, we're using units to the power of 2 because we're calculating the area of each of the sides, which is a two-dimensional shape. In order to finish off our lesson today, what I'm going to ask you to do is go ahead and try to calculate the surface area of each one of the prisms here. So for the first one, we've got a rectangular prism, so of course that's made up of 6 rectangles. For the second one, we've got a triangular prism, which is made up of 3 rectangles and 2 triangles. Do include the unit in your final answer and note the units that are on the question. Go ahead and give those a try, and if you're able to do those, congratulations, you now have a firm understanding of how to calculate the surface area of prisms.